Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast, a conversation aimed at understanding all sides of mental health, addiction recovery, and homelessness. Each interview will include one's personal experiences and insights, or an expert's advice and knowledge within one of these fields. The goal is to promote awareness, guidance, and support for anyone who is affected by these challenges. Thank you all for listening. Welcome back to the Mental Insights Podcast. This is your host, Brendan.Cutuli, and we're here today for Season 2, Episode number 25 with Dr. Rachel Barbanel-Fried. In this episode, we're going to be speaking about how mindfulness and meditation can help keep us centered throughout any challenges that we may be facing today. In the previous episode, we spoke about emotional flexibility and how that can help benefit our own mental health. Within what people are facing today, within that concept of anxiety, of being really centered within our past, what challenges are people facing in terms of anxiety and feeling angst and having the past control themselves and not being able to live more within the present?
I mean, it's a great question. It sort of gets us right to the heart of the matter. I think about anxiety and depression as being two sides of the same coin. So anxiety is really about what we fear we can't control in the future, and depression is much more about what we think we did poorly in the past, right? And the reality is, we have no control over anything. And the only thing we really know is this very minute. Right? And so what I tell people when I'm working with them, which sounds nuts to people when I'm saying it to them like the first time, right? But the sooner you can acknowledge that you have little to no control over anything, the less anxious you're going to feel. The more that we can just sit quietly, right, and acknowledge that I'm having this really uncomfortable feeling, the better you're going to feel, which I know sounds totally bonkers, bananas to people who are coming in really suffering from the beginning.
It's certainly, I think, as you do with clients, it's opening up a new perspective and, bringing the client to, see it from a different perspective, seeing it from a different point of view, because, as you're saying, once you're able to identify it, once you're able to become aware of it and not see it as you always have in terms of, why can't I control what I did or what I need to do in the future, they start to understand that living in the present allows themselves to, learn or prepare for whichever it is that, happened or is going to happen. And in terms of, the past, living in the present and the future, as you're saying, you need to center yourself, you need to ground yourself and find ways in which you can learn, educate yourself, and prepare further. But you can't do all that unless you're being here in the now and living within that present moment. And
well, even more so, right? If we go back to what we were just talking about with the emotional flexibility piece, right? If you're sitting in the anxiety or depression, right? If you're sitting in the discomfort, your ability to actually manage whatever it is that comes up is diminished, right? So it's this feedback loop that the more that we can allow ourselves to acknowledge, wow, this is really uncomfortable, but okay, right? The more that we're going to be able to kind of move through that. One of the things that I say to everybody, and I've written, a bunch of blog posts on what we're talking about, but very specifically what I say to people, and I've gotten a lot of responses on this topic in particular, is that every feeling has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right? But we have to be able to sit through it. And sometimes that middle part is really long, but we get so caught up in how uncomfortable it feels that we're convinced it's never going to end. So the problem itself isn't actually the feeling. It's all the thinking that we layer on top of the feeling. And that is, again, where meditation is so helpful, right? Because if you can sit with the feeling long enough, you can figure out what it is you're supposed to do, if anything, right? So for instance, an example was, the day that I got a phone call from my kid's school saying we're shutting down because of this unknown entity, right? Coronavirus. And we don't know how long the kids are going to be out. We don't know what's happening. Nobody knew what was going on, but come pick up your kids right now. Right. And I had about half an hour of time between when I got the call and when I had to be there. And I was just flooded with anxiety, right? And I could feel it literally start at my head and just sort of scroll. I felt like it was like a screen coming through, just enveloping my body, right? And my thinking was all over the place. I was completely terrified, right? And I knew, thankfully, because I've practiced for so long, I was like, there's nothing else I can do. What I need to do is I need to sit and meditate, right? And so I made myself sit for 10 minutes, and it was the most painful thing that I have done in a long time. Every ounce of me was screaming to get up and move and do something, but there was nothing to do. Right. And so by the end of the 10 minutes, my breathing had calmed down, and your breathing is a feedback loop that calms your thinking down, calms your whole body down, sort of kicks the relaxation response into starting. And then I was able to be more present and more available for my kids when I did then go pick them up, right? Because I had taken those few minutes to kind of sit with that wash of overwhelm, the feelings of anxiety and fear and all of that, and recognize, all right, I lived through this horrible 10 minutes. I can probably live through the next 20.
Valuable advice, because you're bringing about a lot of different issues in terms of you're stating how much of a challenge it is in terms of making that change, because it is hard to understand that initially,
Yeah,
as
it's so hard.
yeah, because when you're still having these struggles, you're tied to your thoughts, you're tied to the perceptions of yourself, whether you're bringing yourself down, whether you're saying that you're not good enough, whether you can't benefit or improve yourself in the future. And as you're saying, that quick change in terms of changing from your thoughts to your emotions to trying to think about how you feel can be that drastic change in terms of lowering your aspect of breathing, lowering the chances in which you see yourself as this bad figure. This can be done through meditation, but it's not as simple as just telling someone, all right, you just need to sit and breathe and just think, because people will just say, I've been doing that for the past hour, but it's doing that in the wrong light of being tied to your thoughts rather than to your emotions.
Right. So what I say, is your feelings are valid, right? Any feeling you have is valid, but don't believe everything you think, right? Because just because you're thinking it doesn't mean it's true. And we're very tricky in the way we speak to ourselves and what we think is going to be, helpful or successful. So it's very complicated. And, most change, I think, happens very slowly and then sort of all at once, right? So the thing about meditation is most of the time it sucks. Most of the time it's boring. Most of the time you actually can't get yourself to quiet down enough for more than maybe one breath or half of an in-breath or something, right? But it's the practice of it. It's the constant coming back to it. That's where the magic is, right? So it's not ever, at least it hasn't been in my experience, and I know a lot of meditators and I work with a lot of people. I don't know anybody who says like, oh, this is like a drastic change, right? No, this is painstakingly earned minute by minute.
And, within any of the challenges that we face, as we're saying, it's not easy. It's never going to be easy. It's never going to change overnight. But this being meditation is a crucial step in order to, start to come to terms in what you're feeling and how you can work through these emotions. Because if you're not working through your emotions, then there's no growth that can truly happen. You can't just say and try a new lifestyle without working through your emotions and saying, all right, I'm healthy, I feel great. You still haven't worked through the challenges that are deeply rooted within your system in terms of, you know, whether it's how you perceive yourself or how someone perceived you, and that impacted, your own emotional, just structure and durability. And within how we're able to meditate and how we're able to, change the way we think and feel, how does meditation benefit our belief system, within ourself and within the way that we carry ourselves throughout the day? How does it, reprogram, our thought processes and our belief system within ourself?
So, mindfulness is about really how we relate to our experiences, right? And it's hard because we're sort of chasing it, right? Because as our day goes on, and we get busier throughout the day, our thoughts get busier, right? And if we don't give them attention, then they kind of start to get bigger and sort of get more insistent, right? But the truth is that as soon as we have one thought, then we're on to like the next one almost immediately, right? And so the practice is in noticing where your attention goes without judgment, right? So like just paying the one of the metaphors that people use all the time is sort of like a cloud going by, right? You often, right, our thoughts are more like a train, right? They are coming through, right? And at the same time, there's this judgment constantly. That's a good one, that's a bad one, that's a bad one, that's a bad one, that's an okay one, bad, 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 right? But if you're just lying on the ground, I don't know if, this would be an assignment I would give to somebody, right? Lie on the ground and look up at the sky. Right? Don't look at the sun directly ever. That's bad for your eyes. But, like look at the sky and look at the clouds or the absence of clouds. And can you treat your thoughts in the same way? We don't say that's an ugly cloud or that's a bad cloud or that cloud isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. Right? We might say, oh, I wish it wasn't so cloudy. I need some more sun, right? Or those clouds look ominous. Right? Or we might describe them, oh, it looks like, a bunny rabbit or whatever it is, but it's not imbued with the same sense of judgment that we attach to our thoughts. And that judgment is problematic because the judgment also gets attached to ourselves. And the judgment also interferes with whatever feeling we may have underneath behind the thought.
Absolutely. And as you stated earlier, it could be as simple as 5 minutes. It could be as simple as just taking a few breaths and trying to calm yourself down. And, it really doesn't matter in terms of when you do, a form of meditation. It could be in the morning, it could be at night, it could be in the middle of the day. It's really whenever you need it. And in terms of, the aspect of even taking these 5 minutes, how can this, help in terms of just productivity of the day of, whether it's even processing our thoughts or being able to, be being flexibility within our emotions to try to, work throughout the many aspects of our social life, our work life. How can just 5 minutes be something to drastically change the way that we perform and are productive in terms of, all the different aspects that we have to go throughout in our day.
So there's this really famous saying, and I can't remember, I feel like it was the Buddha who said it. You should meditate 20 minutes every day, and on the days that you don't have time, you should meditate for an hour, right? And the sort of understanding behind that is that meditation is really important, and it's going to help us be more emotionally flexible. It's going to help us be more effective in our lives, right? So I can talk about it neurobiologically, right? You need a certain amount of the sort of good neurotransmitters. I mean, neurotransmitters aren't good or bad. They're, they just are. They're not like they're ethically and they're ethically neutral, right? So, but you need a certain amount of the sort of happy feelings, the contented feelings, to be productive, right? And what we know is that one of the ways you can do that is by regulating your breath. So sitting still for 5 minutes a day and really just paying attention to your breath is going to have an effect on your neurotransmitters, and it's going to have an effect then on how you feel and how you think and how you act and how you are in the world. And likewise, if we give ourselves the time to really sit and pay attention to those thoughts that are coming and going, and we can start to kind of sort of separate ourselves from the thought and this is me thinking, then we can also separate ourselves more in the moment, right? So, so another example, right, is when I'm trying to get dinner on the table, right, and my kids are being crazy and berserk, and I know it's because they're hungry and it's the end of the day, but I'm just trying to like make sure everything gets taken care of, right? If I've meditated, then I probably have a little bit more space in me to be able to respond to them in a way that's going to be better for all of us versus just responding to the anxiety that's inside of me because they're being loud and, irritating and whatever else is going on.
And, it's not even just for, parents who are stressed out due to children or due to partners. Could you explain more about how anybody can benefit from this, whether it's, an elderly person or whether it's a child, just taking these 5 minutes to meditate and be more mindful about their present moment?
Well, I mean, it's exactly what you said, right? It's not for anyone in particular, it's for everyone. And if you look, historically, if you look at any of the major religions, right, there is a meditative quality and tradition in any of them, right? Because it is part of what we need to do as humans. Because if we don't take the time to take a deep breath, if we don't take a time to separate ourselves from this is the thought and I am the thinker, then we just react. And then we're not even, then we're not doing stuff that makes us feel good or proud of ourselves. We're not acting and interacting with people in a way that helps them feel good. We're just reacting. And that just doesn't feel good for anyone.
It certainly doesn't. And it poses so much challenges if, as you're saying, we're not making those changes. We're not taking those initial steps. And, within our society today, we're all being pulled in many different avenues. And, we need education, whether it's, practicing meditation, mindfulness, or whether it's, explaining more about, emotional flexibility, emotional intelligence, even just about, what people struggle with in terms of mental health and what's going on today. There's a lot of challenges that people are facing, and, we need to continue these conversations and continue to bring out these resources as we're speaking about activities that you can do daily, that you don't need, someone there to monitor you, but it's still good to have, as you're saying, someone to talk to over the phone, someone to be on video to work throughout whatever you're going through. We need more accessible resources.
Well, for sure. That's for sure true. There are lots of really great meditation apps out there. And in fact, my personal favorite app right now is Waking Up with Sam Harris. Um, and he said at the beginning of the whole COVID-19 thing that if you can't afford to pay for the yearly subscription, all you have to do is email them at, the info at whatever it is, it's called Waking Up, and they'll waive the fee for the year because he thinks it's so important for our planet, for humanity, right? So there are lots of options. There's no reason to not be able to do this. And in fact, the way that I really became interested in meditation as a tool and teaching meditation and using it in my practice was when I was working in schools that were primarily with adjudicated youth. So I was working with kids, teenagers who were like in and out of jail, in and out of foster care, who had really hard stories, who were really, really struggling, who were, using a lot of different substances. And, I was really clear with them. If you can't use your brain, you're not going to be able to get yourself out of a difficult position. And if you can't slow down long enough to take a deep breath, you're not going to be able to think. So let's work on meditation. Let's work on breath control. You want to be a rap star or a basketball star or a dancer or anything, you need to be able to control your breath. Right. And so it's for anyone. It's not like for just like the, guru sitting on a mountain in an orange robe, right? This is a skill that's going to help you do anything you want. And the other reason that I love using it with folks in my practice is because you can take this with you. It costs nothing and you can do it anywhere. Don't do it while you're driving, but you're in a stressful situation at work. I mean, most of us aren't physically at work, although some people still are. You can always go, you can hopefully go and say, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and take 5 minutes to check in with what's happening inside, and nobody has to know.
Thank you for sharing that. And, below in the show notes, I'll link the Waking Up with Sam Harris below. So anybody listening can seek out that resource. Even if you don't have the funds to do so, you can reach out and take advantage of that. As well, we're going to have your website, Rachel, below, so people can get more accustomed with the work that you're doing, and link towards your social media as well so they can get in touch. And, you briefly spoke a little bit about, the work that you've done in other communities to help uplift people, as well as we've spoken about how you're helping clients. And this last question that I like to ask my guests is kind of, what you're looking forward to in the future, what you would be looking to do if you had the resources in order to help anybody that you really could. And it's this hypothetical situation that you were, provided a large sum of money. So you're given an organization that you could help allocate resources to, any cause that you really want, and, one that you think could make the most tangible, change within mental health, within, addiction, whatever you think that could drastically change throughout our society today. I want you to just take a few minutes and share, what you think could be the best ways in which we could help uplift more people throughout our society today and help, create change.
Well, there's sort of two thoughts I have. It's a great question. And so there's sort of two thoughts. First, I think I said to you already, I think bang for buck, the best thing any of us can do is learn how to meditate, right? So in terms of societal change, in terms of making the best strides, it's certainly true for folks who struggle with addiction. It's certainly true for folks who struggle with all sorts of mental health issues. Although I will say that if you struggle with psychosis, that meditation and mindfulness meditation in particular is not something that you should do. So if you're struggling, if you have a history of psychosis, if there's psychosis in your family, it's definitely something I would not suggest that you do like on your own, for sure. So I would love to be able to kind of like get, meditation into the world more, right? But I don't actually necessarily want to be the person who's teaching meditation day in and day out. That's not really my thing. And your question is also a great one, I think, particularly for me, in that I have the incredible fortune to have a career that has changed with me over the years. So I can kind of work on the things that I want to work on. And so some of the things that I am working on right now is trying to figure out how to bring this to larger groups, right? And so, again, going back on sort of like what's been beneficial about this really horrible situation that we're all in with COVID-19 and having to be at home, I've been able to do a number of different kinds of Zoom phone calls. I have a series that I put together with my colleague, Dr. Sarah Sarkis, and we did a series of house calls, sort of answering questions people had around emotional flexibility and around fear and anxiety and panic, and then boredom and stagnation and depression, specifically around COVID. And I would love to be able to have the time and the resources to really put together a platform where I could reach more people, because I think that's actually, where we can sort of do the most good for the universe, right? Because if you feel better, you treat people around you better.
It all starts within yourself, and it's certainly a valuable point. And it's great to hear, that you are really creating these initiatives today. You are doing the work, and we'll have that series below in the show notes as well for people to check it out. And people, feel free to reach out if you want to learn more, if you want to ask questions from Rachel. Her contact information will be below in the show notes, and you can reach out. You can ask more questions. You could seek out the education which she's providing everyone today. So, I just want to thank you for taking this time to be on the Mental Insights podcast, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And everybody, be sure to, let us know what you think about this episode. Let us know if you have any other questions to move forward. And be sure to listen to the first part of the episode if you haven't already today, about emotional flexibility. And I want to thank you all again for listening. And this was your host, Brendan.Cutuli of the Mental Insights podcast. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Mental Insights podcast. Make sure to reach out to today's guest or myself if you need any advice, guidance, or support in your life today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and review to this podcast so we know what you thought of this episode. I look forward to being in touch with you all in the next episode. I hope you all have a wonderful day.